Greetings to you from the table of Cloud. My name is Paul Taye Oburefo. I am a product of Pillars Cloud Technology. I'm also a Bonafide member of the HA-SHEM family. So today, unlike our usual manner where I do my reports in a written format, we are going to do a live demonstration of one of the things I have personally learned over the past weeks from the ABC of Cloud. And what I have today for us is the DHCP role. What is a DHCP? A DHCP in full is a dynamic host configuration protocol. And what it does for us, once the role is installed on a server, it's now automatic an IP address to all the devices within that network. So this is a domain controller, my primary domain controller, which I've been using in the course of training. And from here, you see that we've made a lot of changes so far. This picture you are seeing here on this surface is not a regular wallpaper that you will see, but this is appearing here as a result of group policy object that was pushed, right? And another thing I'd like to show you as well is the power option that is disconnected. I mean, that is removed from all the users in this domain. If you see, because it's a domain controller, you are seeing disconnect. If we are to sign in into our client computer, you will see it's boldly written as the option is not available. So not to deviate, let's go straight to our server manager and install the DHCP server role. So what we want to do is to add a role or feature. You can as well navigate to this manager and click on add rules and feature, whichever be the case. So yes, we want to install this role, and I mean, it's a role-based or feature-based installation on this machine, and this is the pole we are picking. Yes, and the role is what? DHCP server role. So we want to make this domain controller a DHCP server to be assigning IP addresses to every other devices within this tools, and the likes. Even when we say dynamic, it means that it will be assigning a temporary IP addresses to them. Okay, then we will just confirm, right? Then the next thing we want to do is to install and wait for this installation to be completed. So it will not take a lot of time before it will, but while it does, I want you to take note of our notification flag here. It's showing one, which is to say that something is currently running on the background, which is the feature that we are being installed. Now, after the installation, I'm expecting that something else should pop up from here, and it will be a bit different from this one, just so you know what this actually means. And here you see a warning sign beside the notification flag. And that is just to say my attention is needed there. Meanwhile, the installation is completed, and here you see complete DHCP configuration, meaning that the configuration has not been completed yet. I can either just click here to complete it or finish up, or I will come here to see which activity is calling for my attention. And in this case, it's still the same as complete the DHCP configuration. So I can either go from here or go from here, right? Now from here, you are seeing something here that, okay, the description. Now I want you to see something. This is DHCP administrator and this is DHCP users. These are security groups that will be created if I am done configuring that role for our server. Now I want you to take note of something, and that is why I'm opening my active users and computers. Now, if I should come to my users, you will see the current groups that I'm having. Let me just filter for only group, right? I want this list to show only groups for me, right? So if I should come to users now, you see that these are all the groups I'm currently having in my domain, right? And you don't see anything such as the DHCP here. So let's see what happens after I complete the setup of this domain. This DHCP server configuration. And yes, this will be the administrator, and I just want to commit. So if I should close, then I will close this. You see this, the error sign has gone, nothing is calling for my attention, but I have 2 notifications. If I want to see what has happened, I'll just come over and see that, okay, the feature was successfully installed. Then the post-deployment configuration, which is what we just did now, is also completed. Now, I want to go back to my active users computer where I filter for only group, right? Now I want to refresh. Let's see the changes that will occur. Now we now have DHCP administrators and DHCP users. What this means is they are both security groups, but users that are here as administrators will be able to manage and configure the DHCP servers, right? They'll be able to make changes and, do and undo on what they want to do because they are administrator. While the users are just there to be able to see, they have the read-only permission, which means that they'll be able to see the changes and configuration that are being made to the DHCP server, but they will not be able to modify it, unlike the administrator will be able to do. So having stated that, the next thing I want us to look at is, if you check here, you will see the DHCP row coming up here and everything is green. This one that I'm showing red are not stuff that are very serious, but it's good you always see your stuff in green. I could just come and start the services that are here and then check the events that are here and bring them back to green. But what I just want you to see is the DHCP role here that is open, and you as well see DHCP here. So now the next thing I want us to do is to come to our tools. Now, right from our tools, just navigate to the DHCP. I want us to see something. Now, when you are on DHCP, I want you to observe some things. This is our server, right? Now, if you open this server, you see the IPv4 checked and the IPv6 checked. Good. Now, this is because this server has been authorized to assign these IP addresses. I can decide to do unauthorized. When I do this, this will turn to red, meaning they are no longer authorized to give IP addresses. I would not love to, check that out now because delay in reflection. So you can just try this out from your end if you are doing this, right? So now, what I want to do, our focus is on IPv4, is to give a drop. If I should click on this IPv4, the next thing you see is I should add a scope, meaning that there is no scope that is already defined. Now, what we want to do is to define a scope for this DHCP server. And doing that, I will just come here, right click, and you see a new scope. Let's define a scope. Now, the IP address of my server is 192.168.1.1. The name, I'll just say DHCP and DHCP test. Will not be needing this description, but in a real life, scenario, you'll be needing it in case of other administrators that will be coming in to be able to tell from the description what the scope is being used for, right? Then next. Now, I want to say where should my IP address start from in assigning to other devices using this server. I want this device to be to start sending IP addresses out from 192.168.1.2 now, and then I want it, .20, and I want it to stop at 192.168.1.80, meaning that this server will be able to give out 60 IP addresses. I want you to take note of the subnet mask that is here. You see 255.255.255.0 here. This is because this server I'm using is this IP address I'm using is currently defined by me. This is not the original lab I'm using for my ABC of Cloud Computing program. So I am currently using 255.255.255.0 because this is not the original lab I'm using for my ABC of Cloud Learning. Otherwise, we have been given a range of IPs to use, and we segmented our IP, our network into 8, which I happens to fall in 1. So in that 8, my subnet mask will be 224, right? And now if I say 224, you will see something here that the length changed to 27. This is the CIDR notation. But in this particular server, I'm using .0, meaning that all the network is, the network is 0 and just 1, and you see this turn to 24 automatically. This is the CIDR. So you need a basic understanding of IP addressing before you'll be able to configure this scope or define a scope. Then the next thing I want to do is to add an exclusion if there is any. What is this exclusion? Meaning that, yes, in as much as I want this IP, I want this server to be giving out IP between .20 and .80, I want it to exclude or not be able to assign a particular IP address from, a particular IP address range. And what I will do from here is I will now select 192.168.1.20. Remember that we are starting from 20, in assigning. Then I will now say it should end at 192.168.30. Sorry, .1.30. Now, this is where the test will come from, you that is watching this part. Just imagine if this server is to send an IP to a device, what IP is it going to assign to that device? The next one I mean to say. All right, just try to calculate that answer in your head, and when we get to that point, and maybe you'll be able to tell why and how. And perhaps you get it, fine. And I hope you really get it from my explanation. So I will just do next. Now here you see lease duration. So when we see lease, we are we are saying more like a borrow, like we said before. It is a temporary use, and anything that is temporary is not like you are borrowing it. So what it does is, how many days do you want to keep this IP, or do you want to give this IP out to this device before it can be removed from the device and probably assigned to another? And in this case, by default, it comes by 8 days. This 8 days means that if I'm defining this code to carry up to 8 days, means that if it assign an IP address to a computer, a particular device, it will not be removed here. Even when that address is needed for possible another device, it will not be removed until after 8 days, right? So here I want to define it as 1 day. That at every 24 hours, try to refresh these devices and assign IP addresses to them accordingly if they are within our network, right? So I'll now go next. The next thing I'll see is configure IP and DHCP option, which is, yes, I want this configuration option now, right? So here you see a default gateway. What I will just use is I will use this particular domain controller as this particular server as our default gateway, right? And then I'll just do add and I'll next. Okay, now from here, you are seeing that the parent domain is this guy, and the IP, the servers that we have currently is this guy. I want to add up another server. Of course, there are supposed to be 2 that will come up here, but I'm not sure why the 2 are not coming up. But because of that, I will just try and manually enter the details of the second server. So it's 192.168.1.2. I hope this works. Validating if DNS service, server service is running on this. This process can take some time due to network traffic. Oh, maybe I don't want to try this then. And definitely it is anyway. Okay, now the IP address, this is not valid DNS address. Do you still want to add up? So I'll just do no to avoid complication. Maybe there are errors in my DNS configuration, which I will likely try to check out later. So from here, otherwise it should pick it automatically, right? So from here, I will just do next. Then Win server. This is actually depreciated, is used for old server. So in this case, we don't really need it. So I'll just go ahead and say I want this code to be activated now, right? Then I'll finish. Now we have a scope. If we should open this scope, what does it contain? We have the address pool, right? This is the address pool. We are saying assign from 192 to, .20 to .80. Then the ones that it has listed already is none, and reservation as well is none. Now, what is this reservation? What reservation does is you can decide that, okay, maybe you are using a printer in an organization, for example. A printer does not need to be changing IP addresses often because almost everybody in the organization is connecting to it within the network, right? So what you may do is, okay, you want to reserve this particular IP for this printer. No matter what happens, it's not changing and it's not assigning that IP to any other device. It remains permanent with it. So we want to test out this code. How then do we test it out? For us to test it out, we are just going to open our client machine and remove the current IP address that is having and see how it will pick up an IP and the IP it will pick. Please remember that I told us earlier when I was configuring execution to think about the IP address it will pick. So you can just begin to imagine that now in your head. So yeah, in one of my documentation, we encountered this issue. And when this happens, you don't need to bother your head around it so much. All you just need to do is to come and check this enhanced session, right? Now it's up, and all I just need to do is to enter the password again, right? And now Chinedu Yakubu is signing in, right? Now there is no picture on this surface, but there's supposed to be at least the operating system default wallpaper here. However, because of the group policy that have been pushed to this domain, which is supposed to put my picture up here, you are seeing this. And if I should try to turn off, like I said earlier, you will see there are currently no power options available, right? That is the power of the group policy. Now, what we want to do quickly is to open our CMD and, of course, ping, right? We are going to do IP config. Then we do this /all, and it will give us the details of this IP address. See, DHCP is not enabled. This is the IPv4 address, like I said earlier on, is .1.3. And then we have a subnet mask 255.255.0, and the default gateway is nil. then the DNS server. You see now the DNS server here say .1 and also .2. I'm not sure why it's not working for me in defining my scope for my DHCP. However, what we are going to do now is to remove this particular IP address from this machine and see what happens next. So to do that, I'll just come to my network adapter, and then I'll navigate to my internet, and from internet I'll do change adapter option, right? And then I'll do internet. Yes, I don't have the permission to do that. Because of that, it will prompt me to sign in with my administrator's account. So doing that now, I will just do what I need to do, supply my credential, sign in, which will give me a permission to come and do this. So I will just double click on this IPv4 rather than the default, the initial IP address that it has. I'll just say obtain IP address automatically, and as well as obtain DNS server address automatically. And then I'll OK this, I will OK this, and then I can close this out. Immediately, I am going back to my CMD to run the command active config/all again, right? If I should run this now, I want us to look at the differences that has been made. Now, if you check the first one, the DNS servers are well correct. The IPv4 address is .1.3. The DHCP enabled is no. In this case, now you see DHCP enabled is now yes, right? And the IPv4 address is 20. I thought I added exclusion. Oh, that exclusion did not work. However, that is not an issue, right? Now you see the default gateway is .1, the DNS server is .1, and DHCP server and DNS server. The DNS is supposed to be .1, .2, but that is not an issue. But another thing I want you to take a look at is the lease obtained. The lease was obtained on June 28th at this time, and it will expire at this time. Now, when it expires, this IP address can be assigned to another device. And when this device comes back to wants to pick another IP, it may likely pick another one if it's connected to our network, right? So let's check and see. I really want to see my exclusion. So my exclusion, I didn't take notes. Yes, there's no exclusion here, really. There is no exclusion here, really. So there's supposed to be an exclusion, right? There's supposed to be an exclusion. So, and the exclusion is not here. If it was, if it's had picked that 20 to 30, the IP address it would have given out is .31 and not 20. So that being said, let's check our address list. Now you see that this place now is empty, right? But now we refresh and see. Now on refresh, you see that it has already given this computer this IP address, right? This is what it has given to it. Okay. Now, if I decide to say I want to add this to reservation, if I do this, meaning no matter what happens, this IP address is tied to this client's computer. That thing we'll talk about is the failover, but not today. Let me quickly define another scope. Maybe probably delete this. I'm going to delete this guy, and then quick one, define another scope, just so I can show us what I meant by that exclusion. So I will go again, DHCP test, right? And then I'll do next 192.168.1.20. So that is where it's starting from, 192.168.1.18, right? So this is where it's ending, and this is the old network. Then exclusion 192.168.1.20 to end at 192.168.1.30, right? Oh, maybe I didn't add before. Yeah, so that is it. And then one day, and yes, then I will do 192.168.1.1, right? This will be our DNS server. Our default gateway. Then I'll next it, and of course, this will be our DNS server. Then when server, we don't need this, and then I'll just complete this and say I want to, this to work now, right? So address pool. Now look at this. You see the address pool starting is from 20 to 80, and then the exclusion will now have the exclusion here. This is how the other one ought to have shown. Now let's go back to our client's computer and try to see from here first. Let's see if it changes, right? Okay, it has not. So I will just go back to our settings. I'll go back to our settings. Then I will say, okay, let me sign in. So two things I want to do. Uh, two things I want to do is to come here, assign an IP address to it, right? 168.1.3. Yeah, this remains. I'll just do it okay, right? I'll just do it okay, and then I will come back to it again, and then let's come to this guy and enter. So the IP address has changed now. I'll come back to change it to pick automatically, right? Then I'll have to supply my administrator's credentials again. All right. So if I should enter, this is it, and I'll say pick automatic, and pick automatic, and then I'll okay this. Then I'll return back here and try to see. Then let's see what happens. DHCP enable, yes. I'm not seeing it picking up. Maybe probably close this out. Then no. Then I'll do my CMD. I don't know if this computer will need a restart. Then I'll do IP config/all. Then I will enter. Right. Thank you. Thank God it worked. So from here now, you see the IPv4 address that is assigned, .31, right? And you see the lease period, the day it obtained it, and when it's set to expire. So this, perhaps you got this answer right before. Like I said, it should be from 31. Congratulations. And perhaps you get confused, please just try calm down and wrap your head around it. Thank you very much for watching up to this end. I hope to see you again next time, probably when we are configuring the failover. Thank you again.